I have seen a lot of bad news in my life. I have seen men lose businesses, families split apart over money, and good people sit across from me with eyes that looked like they had not slept in years. But nothing prepared me for the way Dr. Hannah Reed looked at that piece of paper. She did not gasp. She did not call for a nurse. She did not rush out of the room. She just stood there in the doorway of that pediatric urgent care clinic in Plano, Texas, holding my granddaughter's test results in both hands. And for a few seconds, she said absolutely nothing. That silence told me more than any words could have. Emma was asleep against my shoulder, 7 years old, my son's little girl, my only granddaughter. Her cheek was pressed against my jacket, her little hand still curled around the sleeve of my shirt, like she was afraid I might disappear if she let go. But this was not a normal nap. It was 4:18 in the afternoon. Kids get tired. I know that. They run around, they crash, they wake up hungry and asking 100 questions. But this was different. Emma had not drifted off. She had gone under. 1 minute she was sitting beside me, barely keeping her eyes open. The next, her whole body went heavy, like someone had slowly turned down the lights inside her. I looked from Emma to the doctor. Dr. Reed took one careful breath, then stepped into the room and closed the door behind her. That was when my stomach tightened. Doctors do not close doors like that unless the conversation is about to change your life. She looked at Emma first, then she looked at me. "Mr. Miller," she said quietly, "how long has she been drinking this apple juice?" I stared at her. "What apple juice?" She looked down at the test results again, as if she wished the paper would say something different the second time. Then she looked back at me. And right there, in that small clinic room with cartoon animals painted on the wall, I felt something cold settle deep in my chest, because I did not know what was in Emma's apple juice. I did not know how long she had been drinking it. And I did not know why a 7-year-old child had whispered to me earlier that day, asking me to tell her mother to stop putting medicine in it. But I knew one thing. Something was very wrong inside that beautiful house in Plano. The kind of house with trimmed hedges, clean windows, and a wreath on the front door that changed with every season. The kind of house people drive past and think, that family must have everything figured out. They did not. And 3 days before that, doctor looked me in the eye. I had almost stayed home. My back was still hurting. I was tired. I told myself I could visit Emma over the weekend. After all, I had already missed her 7th birthday. What difference would a few more days make? That question still haunts me, because if I had waited, my granddaughter might have kept drinking that apple juice, and nobody would have known. 3 days before I sat in that clinic with Emma asleep on my shoulder, I was just an old man trying to fix a small mistake. That was all. No plan, no suspicion, no idea that one ordinary Tuesday afternoon was about to change my family forever. It was April 15th, 2025. I remember the date because I had spent the whole morning arguing with myself about whether I should drive or stay home. My back was still giving me trouble. Every time I stood up too fast, pain shot straight down my spine and reminded me I was not as young as I used to be. But guilt has a way of getting a man on his feet. Emma's 7th birthday had been 3 days earlier, and I had missed it. I did not forget. I would never forget that little girl's birthday. I had been stuck at home, barely able to walk, telling myself she would understand. But she was 7. And 7-year-old girls should not have to understand why their grandfather's chair was empty at their birthday party. So I packed her gift in a pale pink bag, tucked a white stuffed bunny inside, and drove from Richardson to Plano. The whole way there, I kept picturing her face. Emma running to the door. Emma throwing her arms around me. Emma asking why I was late, then forgiving me before I even finished explaining. That was the Emma I knew. Bright, loud, full of questions. The kind of child who could turn a quiet room into a parade without even trying. Ryan and Lauren's house looked the way it always did. Clean driveway, trimmed hedges, a seasonal wreath on the front door. From the outside, it looked like the kind of home people point to and say, "Now that is a family doing well." I parked my old Ford F-150 by the curb, picked up the gift bag, and walked to the front door. Lauren answered with her phone already in her hand. She gave me a quick smile. Not warm, not rude, just quick. "Hey, Frank," she said, already glancing back at the screen. "Emma's upstairs. I brought her birthday gift," I told her. Figured I owed her a proper visit. "That's sweet," she said. But she said it like her mind was somewhere else. Then she stepped aside, waved me in, and turned back toward the kitchen before I had both feet through the door. "I've got a call," she added. "Just go on up." That was the first thing that felt wrong. Not big wrong, just off. The house was spotless, but it felt empty in a way I could not explain, like all the warmth had been polished out of it. I stood in the entryway for a second, holding that little pink bag, listening to Lauren's voice fade into the kitchen. Then I started up the stairs. Emma's room was the second door on the left. There was still a handmade sign taped to it, covered in glitter and crooked purple letters. Emma's room. Knock first. I smiled when I saw it. Then I knocked. Emma Bug, I called softly. It's Grandpa. For a moment nothing happened. Then I heard slow footsteps. The door opened just a few inches, and when I saw her face, that smile I had ready for her disappeared before I could stop it. Emma stood there in pink pajamas, even though it was the middle of the afternoon. Her eyes were heavy. Her shoulders looked tired. Even the way she held the doorknob seemed weak. Grandpa, she said, but it came out soft. Too soft. Like her voice had to travel through water before it reached me. I crouched down and tried to keep my face calm. Hey, birthday girl, I said. You got room for one late present? She nodded, but even that was slow. And right then, standing in the hallway of that perfect house, I knew something was not right. Emma was not just sleepy. Something was pulling her down. I forced myself to smile. That is not easy when every instinct in your body is telling you something is wrong. Emma was standing in front of me, wearing pink pajamas in the middle of the afternoon, with her hair a little messy and her eyes half open, but I could not let her see fear on my face. Children notice more than adults think they do, so I crouched down in front of her, held up the pale pink gift bag and said, Well, birthday girl, I heard somebody turn 7 without me. She gave me a small smile, not the big Emma smile I was used to. Not the one that showed up before she ran across a room and jumped into my arms. This one was slower, like it had to fight its way through whatever tiredness was sitting behind her eyes. I did, she said softly. I know, I told her, and I am sorry I missed it. She looked down at the gift bag in my hand. For a second, I thought that little spark might come back. The excited one, the one every child gets when there is a surprise in front of them. But even opening the bag seemed hard for her. She sat on the edge of her bed and pulled the tissue paper out piece by piece, slowly, carefully, too carefully for a 7-year-old with a birthday present. Then her small hand reached inside and she pulled out the white stuffed bunny. That was when I saw her again. My Emma. Her face changed. Her eyes brightened just a little, and for the first time since I walked into that house, her smile looked real. She's pretty, Emma whispered. She is, I said. I thought she looked like someone who needed a good home. Emma hugged the bunny against her chest. Then she looked at it for a long moment, serious as could be, the way kids do when they are making a very important decision. I'm going to name her Daisy. I nodded. Daisy is a perfect name. For a few seconds, the room felt normal. Just a grandfather, a little girl, a late birthday gift, and I almost let myself believe I had been overthinking it. But then Emma's smile faded. She looked toward the hallway. Not a quick look, a careful one. The kind of look a child gives when she is checking whether someone is listening. That is when the room changed. She scooted closer to me on the bed and placed both of her hands on my knee. Her fingers were warm, but they felt so small, so fragile. Grandpa, she whispered. I leaned in. Yeah, sweetheart? She glanced at the door one more time. Then she said something I will hear for the rest of my life. Can you tell Mommy to stop putting medicine in my apple juice? I did not move. I did not ask her to repeat it. I did not raise my voice. Because the last thing that little girl needed was to think she had done something wrong. So I kept my face calm, even though something inside me had gone ice cold. What do you mean, baby? I asked gently. Emma looked down at Daisy. It makes me sleepy, she said. I don't like it. That was all. Simple words. A child's words. But they landed heavier than anything I had ever heard. I took her hand in mine and gave it one soft squeeze. Okay, I said. Thank you for telling me. She looked up at me, unsure. Like she needed to know if she was in trouble, so I smiled again. Not because I felt calm, because she needed me to be. You and me, I said. We're going to take a little ride. And in that moment, I understood one thing clearly. Anger would have to wait. Questions would have to wait, because if what Emma said was true, then I needed proof. And more than anything, I needed to get her out of that house. There are moments in life when a man wants to react, not think, not plan, just react. And sitting there on the edge of Emma's bed, with her tiny hand in mine and those words still hanging in the air, every part of me wanted to storm downstairs and demand answers. I wanted to look Lauren in the eye and ask her what kind of mother puts anything in her child's drink. I wanted to call Ryan right then. I wanted to call the police. I wanted to make noise. But noise would not protect Emma, not yet. If Lauren knew Emma had told me something, she could deny it. She could throw the bottle away. She could say I misunderstood a tired child. She could make me look like an angry old man who missed a birthday and came looking for problems. And the truth is, I had no proof. Not yet. All I had was a little girl's whisper. And that whisper was enough for me to act. But it was not enough to win. So I swallowed every bit of anger in my throat and smiled at my granddaughter. "You know what, birthday girl?" I said softly. "I think Daisy needs to go for a ride." Emma looked down at the stuffed bunny in her arms. "A ride?" "That's right," I told her. "Maybe even ice cream." That got the smallest smile out of her. It nearly broke me. I stood up slowly, held out my hand, and let her take it. Her fingers felt light in mine, too light, like she was tired all the way down to her bones. We walked downstairs together. Lauren was still in the kitchen, phone pressed to her ear, pacing by the island like she had no idea the ground beneath her perfect house was already beginning to crack. She looked up when she saw us. "Everything okay?" she asked. Her voice was casual, too casual. I kept my face calm. "Yeah," I said. "I'm going to take Emma out for some late birthday ice cream. Just me and her." Lauren did not ask where. She did not ask what time we would be back. She did not even look closely at Emma's face. She just waved one hand and said, "Sure, that's fine." That was when something inside me went colder. Because if my 7-year-old granddaughter looked that exhausted, I would have asked questions. Any decent parent would have. But Lauren just turned away and went back to her call. I helped Emma into the passenger seat of my old Ford F-150 and buckled her in myself. She was still holding Daisy against her chest, her cheek resting on the bunny's soft white ears. "You okay, sweetheart?" I asked. She nodded, but her eyes were already closing. "We're getting ice cream?" she whispered. I put the truck in reverse. "Soon," I said. "First, Grandpa has to make one stop." I pulled away from that beautiful house in Plano, doing exactly the speed limit. No rushing, no panic, no mistake Lauren could use later. Within minutes, Emma was asleep again. Not a nap, not normal tiredness. The kind of sleep that makes the whole car feel too quiet. I glanced at her, then back at the road. I did not call Ryan, not yet. Ryan loved his daughter, but he also loved his wife. And if I called him with nothing but fear in my voice, he might call Lauren before I had proof. I could not risk that. So I drove past every ice cream shop, every turn that would have made this afternoon normal, and I headed straight for the pediatric urgent care clinic on Legacy Drive, because before I confronted anyone, before I accused anyone, before I tore my family apart with one sentence, I needed a doctor to tell me the truth. By the time I carried Emma into the urgent care clinic, I had already talked myself out of panicking 3 different times. That is what fear does to you. It does not always make you loud. Sometimes it makes you very, very quiet. The clinic sat on Legacy Drive, tucked between a pharmacy and a dental office. Bright lights, clean floors, cartoon animals painted on the walls. The kind of place where parents bring kids with ear infections, fevers, sore throats, maybe a twisted ankle from soccer practice. Not this. Not a 7-year-old girl who had whispered that her mother was putting medicine in her apple juice. At the front desk, I told the nurse something was wrong with my granddaughter. I did not raise my voice. I did not make a scene. But I guess she heard something in the way I said it, because within a few minutes, we were in an exam room. Emma sat on the paper-covered table, with Daisy tucked under one arm. Her eyes kept closing, then opening again, like she was fighting a sleep she did not choose. That was the part that kept tightening around my chest. She was trying to stay awake, and losing. Dr. Hannah Reed came in with a tablet in her hand and a calm face. I had met her once before when Emma had an ear infection. I liked her then because she did not talk down to people. That day, I needed that more than ever. She looked at Emma first. Then she looked at me. "Tell me exactly what happened," she said. So I did. I told her about the late birthday visit, about Emma opening the door in the middle of the afternoon looking like she could barely stand. About the stuffed bunny, about the way Emma checked the hallway before she spoke, and then I repeated the words that had been playing in my head ever since we left that house. Grandpa, can you tell Mommy to stop putting medicine in my apple juice? Dr. Reed's face changed. Not dramatically. Not like in movies. But enough. Her eyes sharpened. Her hand stopped moving over the tablet. And for 1 second, the room felt smaller. She turned back to Emma and began checking her carefully. Eyes, pulse, reflexes, breathing. She asked Emma a few gentle questions, but Emma's answers came slowly. Too slowly. Then Dr. Reed looked at me and said, I want to run a urine test and a toxicology screen. I nodded. I did not ask if she was sure. I already knew we had crossed into something serious. While we waited, Emma climbed off the exam table and curled into my side in the chair. I put one arm around her, and she rested her head against my chest. Within minutes, she was asleep. Not peacefully, heavily. Like her little body had been carrying something it could not fight anymore. I sat there listening to the clock on the wall. Tick, tick, tick. Every sound in that room felt too loud. When Dr. Reed finally came back, she was holding a sheet of paper. She did not speak right away. She looked at the results. Then she looked at Emma. Then she looked at me. Mr. Miller, she said quietly, there is diphenhydramine in her system. I knew the word, but I still needed her to say what it meant. It is commonly found in allergy medicine, she explained. Benadryl is one example. I looked down at Emma asleep against me. How much? I asked. Dr. Reed took a careful breath. The level does not look like a simple one-time mistake, she said. The pattern suggests repeated exposure. Repeated. That word landed hard. Not an accident. Not one bad decision. Repeated. I closed my eyes for 1 second, just long enough to keep my anger from showing on my face. Because Emma was still in my arms, and she did not need my rage. She needed me steady. Dr. Reed lowered her voice. I am legally required to report suspected child endangerment. I nodded. Then report it, I said. She looked almost surprised. I shook my head. I'm not asking you to hide anything, doctor. I just need to know what I have to do tonight to keep her safe. Dr. Reed looked at Emma again. Then she said the words I already knew were coming. Do not take her back to that house. Dr. Reed did not say those words loudly. She did not need to. Do not take her back to that house. That sentence landed in the room like a door closing. I looked down at Emma, still asleep against me, with Daisy tucked under one arm. Her face looked peaceful for the first time all afternoon, but that peace did not comfort me. It scared me, because now I knew why she was sleeping like that. And once you know something like that, you cannot unknow it. Dr. Reed sat across from me and explained what had to happen next. She was going to complete the medical report. She was going to notify the proper child protective authorities in Texas. She was going to document Emma's condition, her test results, and what Emma had told me. I nodded through all of it. I did not argue. I did not ask her to slow down. The truth was, part of me was relieved. Because this was no longer just a grandfather's fear. Now there was a record, a doctor, a test result, a paper trail. And in situations like this, paper matters. Dr. Reed looked at me carefully. Mr. Miller, is Emma's father available? My son, Ryan, I said. He's working today. Does he know? I shook my head. Not yet. She studied my face for a moment, maybe trying to decide whether I was hiding something or just trying not to fall apart. I understand this is difficult, she said, but Emma needs to be somewhere safe tonight. She will be, I told her, and I meant every word. I carried Emma back out to my truck as the Texas sun was starting to drop behind the buildings. The parking lot looked normal, people walking in and out, a mother holding a toddler, a man carrying a box of tissues and cold medicine. Normal life kept moving around us. Mine had stopped. I buckled Emma in, careful not to wake her. Then I sat behind the wheel and just held my phone for a moment. I wanted to call Ryan and tell him everything. I wanted to say, son, something terrible has happened, and you need to come home right now. But that was not a phone call kind of conversation, not with his wife in the same house, not with emotions running high. So I called him and kept my voice steady. Hey son, I said. How's Emma been lately? There was a pause. What do you mean? Sleeping more than usual? Acting tired? Another pause. Then Ryan sighed. Yeah, actually. She's been falling asleep after dinner a lot. Lauren said it was probably just a growth spurt. A growth spurt. I closed my eyes. That was the kind of explanation a tired father accepts because he wants his house to be okay. Ryan was not a bad dad. He was a busy one. And those are not the same thing. I was thinking, I said carefully, maybe Emma could stay with me for a few days. I still feel bad about missing her birthday. Give me a chance to spoil her a little. Ryan's voice softened immediately. She'd love that, Dad. Let me check with Lauren. I already knew the answer before he called me back. 20 minutes later, he did. Lauren says that's fine, he told me. She thinks a change of scenery might be good. I looked over at Emma, asleep in my passenger seat. A change of scenery. That was what Lauren called it. Not concern, not questions, not even hesitation, just permission. And somehow, that made the knot in my stomach pull even tighter. That night, Emma slept in the guest room at my house in Richardson. No apple juice. No strange tiredness after dinner. No locked doors. Just clean sheets, a nightlight, and Daisy beside her pillow. I stood in the hallway for a long time, listening to her breathe. And for the first time in weeks, my granddaughter was safe. But I knew this was only the beginning. I did not sleep much that night. Emma did. And that was the only thing that kept me from falling apart. She was in the guest room, tucked under a soft quilt, Daisy resting beside her pillow. No apple juice on the nightstand. No strange heaviness in her voice. No one telling her she was just tired. Just a little girl finally sleeping because her body wanted rest. Not because someone had pushed it there. I sat at my kitchen table long after midnight with the lamp on low and an old notebook open in front of me. It was the same notebook I used back when I still ran my garage. I used to write down engine problems in it. The dates, sounds, patterns, what the customer said, what I saw with my own eyes. Funny thing about broken things, they usually tell you what happened if you know how to listen. So I started writing. Tuesday, April 15th. Arrived at Ryan and Lauren's house around 2:20 p.m. Lauren distracted, phone in hand. Did not ask why Emma looked tired. Emma, in pajamas. Slow movements. Heavy eyes. Emma said, "Mommy puts medicine in my apple juice." Then I stopped. Seeing those words on paper made my hand tighten around the pen. I wanted it to be impossible. I wanted to be wrong. But Emma's test results were sitting beside that notebook. And paper does not care what you wish were true. The next morning, I called Margaret Walsh. Margaret was a family attorney in Dallas, the kind of woman who did not waste words or soften the truth just to make a person feel better. I had met her years before, after my wife passed, when I needed help with estate paperwork. Back then, she had been calm, precise, and honest. That morning, I needed all three. Her office was on the 6th floor of a building downtown, with tall windows and a view of traffic moving below like nothing terrible ever happened in the world. I sat across from her and laid everything on the desk. The medical report, the notes from Dr. Reed, photos I had taken of the medicine I remembered seeing in Lauren's kitchen cabinet during past visits, and my notebook. Margaret read quietly. She did not interrupt. She did not give me that look people give old men when they think grief has made them dramatic. When she finished, she took off her glasses and looked straight at me. "Frank," she said, "this is not just a custody issue." I nodded. She continued, "This may be child endangerment, and if Ryan wants to protect Emma, everything from this point forward has to be done carefully." Carefully, that word mattered, because anger makes people sloppy, and Lauren could not be given one sloppy move to hide behind. Margaret told me Ryan could not threaten her. He could not storm into the house. He could not grab documents illegally or say anything that sounded like revenge. The priority was simple. Protect Emma first. Build the record second. Then move. We needed pharmacy records if we could get them. Ryan's travel schedule, text messages, any doorbell camera footage, anything that showed when Emma became unusually sleepy and when Lauren had been alone with her. As Margaret spoke, memories began lining up in my head. Emma falling asleep during a video call 2 weeks earlier. Emma rubbing her eyes at dinner and saying, "Mommy's juice tastes funny." Ryan laughing it off because Lauren said she was going through a growth spurt. Little things, small things. The kind of things families explain away because believing the truth would break the whole house open. Margaret slid a business card across the desk. "Vince Carter," she said. "Private investigator, quiet, legal, thorough." I picked up the card. For the first time since Emma whispered those words to me, I felt something sharper than fear. Direction. Because now I had a doctor. I had a lawyer. I had a timeline. And soon, I was going to find out why Lauren had done it. Vince Carter called me 2 days later. It was Thursday evening, just after 6. Emma was in the living room, sitting cross-legged on the rug with Daisy in her lap, watching one of those bright little kids shows where everybody talks too fast and nothing bad ever happens. For the first time since I brought her home, she looked like herself again. Not all the way, but closer. Her eyes were clearer. Her voice had more life in it. She had asked for pancakes that morning and argued with me about whether syrup counted as a food group. That little argument nearly made me cry. Then my phone rang. I stepped into the kitchen and saw Vince Carter's name on the screen. When I answered, he did not waste time. "Mr. Miller," he said, "I found a pattern. That is the thing about people who think they are getting away with something. They usually do not hide everything. They just hide the part they think matters most." Vince had started with Lauren's schedule. Nothing dramatic, nothing illegal, just basic records, public information, and the pieces Ryan was able to provide through Margaret. Ryan's travel calendar, credit card dates, pharmacy receipts, text message timestamps, small things. But small things have a way of lining up when someone has been careless. Vince told me Lauren had been buying children's allergy medicine for months. Not every day. Not in a way that screamed for attention, just often enough. A bottle here, another one a few weeks later. Different stores around Plano and North Dallas. And the dates? They lined up too neatly with Ryan's business trips. Houston, Phoenix, Denver. Every time Ryan was gone for more than one night, there was another purchase. Another evening when Emma had seemed unusually tired. Another phone call where Ryan remembered Lauren saying, "She is just going through a growth spurt." I stood there in my kitchen, one hand gripping the edge of the counter. Outside the doorway, I could hear Emma laughing at the television. That sound made everything worse, because while that little girl had been trying to stay awake in her own home, the adults around her had been explaining it away. Including us. Including me. Then Vince said the name that changed the shape of the whole thing. Evan Brooks. I did not know him. Never heard Ryan mention him. Never saw him at a barbecue, birthday party, or school event. Vince said Evan was 39, a real estate broker living in uptown Dallas. Polished, social. The kind of man who smiled in every photo like life had never told him no. And Lauren had been meeting him for months. Hotel bars, late dinners, short stays at places that were close enough to be convenient, and far enough to feel private. 7 months, Vince said, at least. I closed my eyes. 7 months. Emma had just turned 7 years old, and for 7 months, her mother had been living 2 lives. One life in that perfect house in Plano, with the clean windows and the pretty wreath on the door, and another life in hotel lobbies, parking garages, and quiet messages sent when Ryan was out of town. At first, Vince said, it looked like Lauren may have used the medicine once to get Emma to sleep early. One selfish choice. One night. One excuse. Then one became 2. 2 became a habit. And somewhere along the way, my granddaughter stopped being a child who needed care and became an obstacle to Lauren's secret life. That was the part I could not forgive. Not the affair, not the lying. People have ruined marriages since the beginning of time. But Emma was 7. She trusted the person handing her that apple juice. And Lauren used that trust because it was convenient. When I hung up, I stood in the kitchen for a long time. Then I looked back into the living room. Emma was still holding Daisy, still laughing softly, still safe, for the moment. But now I knew the why, and knowing why did not make it easier. It made it worse. I waited until Friday night to call Ryan over, not because I wanted to delay it. Every hour I kept the truth from my son felt like holding a hot coal in my bare hand. But Margaret was right. If I gave Ryan pieces of the truth, he might try to explain them away. If I gave him fear, he might turn it into denial. If I gave him anger, he might do something careless. So I waited until I had enough. The medical report, the pharmacy records, the timeline, and the photos Vince had taken of Lauren with Evan Brooks. That Friday, Emma was already asleep in the guest room before Ryan arrived. Daisy was tucked under her arm, her nightlight glowing softly beside the bed. I stood in the doorway for a minute and watched her breathe. Not heavy, not forced, just normal. That was the kind of sound a man does not appreciate until he almost loses it. When Ryan pulled into my driveway around 7, he looked tired but relaxed, jacket over one arm, phone in his hand. Still thinking this was just dinner with his father. He had no idea his whole life was waiting for him at my kitchen table. "Something smells good," he said when he walked in. "Brisket," I told him. "Cornbread, too." He gave me a small smile. "You only make that when something's wrong." I almost laughed. Almost. "Then eat while it's still warm," I said. We sat at the table like we had 100 times before. Father and son. 2 plates. 2 glasses of sweet tea. The house quiet around us. Ryan asked about Emma. I told him she was doing better. That was true, but it was not the whole truth. He talked about work for a few minutes. Some delayed shipment. Some client in Phoenix. Words moving through the room like they still belonged to a normal life. I let him finish. I let him eat. I let him have one last calm meal before the floor disappeared under him. Then I stood up, walked to the counter, and picked up the 3 folders. When I placed them in front of him, Ryan looked at me differently. "What is this?" I sat back down. "Read them in order." He opened the first folder. Emma's toxicology report. At first, his face only tightened, like he was trying to understand a language he had never seen before. Then his eyes slowed down over the words. Diphenhydramine. Repeated exposure. Possible intentional administration. His hand went still on the page. "Dad," he said quietly. "Keep reading." He opened the second folder. Pharmacy receipts. Dates. Ryan's travel schedule. Notes from my notebook. Every strange nap. Every dinner she barely stayed awake through. Every time Lauren had called it a growth spurt. The color began to leave his face. Then he opened the third folder. Lauren. Evan Brooks. Hotel lobbies. Parking garages. Dates that matched the nights Ryan was away from home. Ryan closed the folder after the second photo. For a long time, neither of us said anything. The refrigerator hummed. The clock ticked. And my son sat there with both hands flat on the table, staring at a life he no longer recognized. Finally, he stood up. "I need a minute." He walked down the hall to the bathroom and closed the door. I stayed where I was. A father knows when his son is breaking. And a father also knows when to let him break in private. When Ryan came back, his eyes were red, but his voice was steady. He did not ask about Lauren first. He did not ask about Evan. He looked toward the hallway, where Emma was sleeping, and asked the only question that mattered. "Does Emma know what her mother gave her?" I shook my head. "No. She only knows it made her sleepy." Ryan closed his eyes. "Good," he whispered. And in that moment, I saw my son come back to himself. Not the busy husband, not the man who had missed the signs, the father, the real one. And he was awake now. Ryan did not run out of my house that night. And I was proud of him for that. Because rage is easy. Any man can slam a door, raise his voice, and make a bad situation worse. But a father, a real father, learns when to move slowly. He learns when his child's safety matters more than his pride. That weekend, Ryan stayed at my house. He slept in his old room for the first time in years. Or at least, he tried to sleep. Most of the time, I found him sitting in the hallway outside Emma's door, just listening to her breathe. He did not say much. He did not have to. Every few hours, another memory came back to him. Emma falling asleep at dinner. Emma rubbing her eyes during video calls. Emma telling him she did not like the apple juice anymore. And every time, Lauren had given him an easy explanation. She's tired. She's growing. She had a long day. And because Ryan wanted to believe his home was safe, he accepted those answers. That is something I want every parent listening to understand. Trust is good, but trust should never make you blind. If something feels wrong with your child, do not bury that feeling just because the explanation sounds convenient. Ask again. Look closer. Stay present. On Monday morning, I drove Emma to school myself. She was quiet in the truck, holding Daisy in her lap, watching the neighborhoods pass by through the window. Before she got out, she looked at me and said, "Am I staying with you again tonight?" I smiled at her. "As long as you want, sweetheart." That was the first time I saw her shoulders relax. After I walked her inside and made sure she was safe, Ryan went back to the house in Plano. But he did not go alone emotionally. He had Margaret's guidance. He had the medical report. He had the pharmacy records. He had the photos. And most importantly, he had finally opened his eyes. He told me later that Lauren was sitting at the kitchen island when he came in, drinking coffee like it was just another morning. He placed the folders on the counter, one by one, the medical report, the purchase records, the pictures of her and Evan Brooks. Lauren looked at the papers, and for once, that perfect calm face of hers cracked. She started explaining before Ryan even asked a question. She said she was lonely. She said Ryan was never home. She said Emma was difficult at night. She said she only wanted everybody to rest. Ryan let her talk. Then he said one sentence. "No amount of loneliness gives you the right to put something in our daughter's drink." That was it. No screaming, no threats, just the truth. And the truth was enough. The next few weeks were not dramatic the way people imagine. There was no big movie ending. There were meetings, court papers, interviews, waiting rooms, hard conversations. Temporary custody came first, then full custody. Lauren was investigated and allowed only supervised visitation while everything moved through the proper channels. And Emma stayed with Ryan and me while her world was rebuilt slowly, gently, one safe day at a time. Sometimes at night, I still stand in the hallway and listen to her sleep. Not because I am afraid, because now I know the difference. There is a kind of sleep that steals a child from the room, and there is a kind of sleep that comes when a child finally feels safe. That is the one Emma has now. Peaceful, natural, earned. And if this story leaves you with anything, let it be this. Children do not always know how to explain danger. Sometimes they only give you one sentence, one strange comment, one tired look, one quiet whisper. Believe them enough to look closer, because sometimes, looking closer is what saves them.